Good evening and welcome to our session number 2. So you remember you and I, we met a few days ago where we talked about how we should ideally approach RCs, right? And today we'll of course sit down and practice a passage or two together, but alongside that we'll also be talking about reading resources. So a lot of people reach out to me and they ask about what should I read, where should I read it from. So we'd at least go ahead and have a bit of a discussion of those things, and then we will get over to practice. So my name is Vikrant and I welcome you to Physics Wallah's channel, MBA Wallah English. So this is a channel where we know that not everybody is comfortable with Hindi in our country. So this is our attempt at ensuring that you are able to understand things in the language of your choice, English. Now that's at least one language that I do know. So I'd at least try and ensure that we are able to work together more meaningfully for you specifically. So if you have any question, any concern, if there is anything that you want to know, please go ahead and ask. I will clarify those doubts, those issues, those concerns, I'll take care of those. And once I've taken care of those, we can go ahead and work further. So any questions, any issues, anything that you want to talk about? So I'm beginning with the top reading resources for the CAT exam. And I think the goal is to talk about what should you read. Now, had it been our first class together, I would have asked you whether you should read or not. But then that is something that we have already established in our last class. In case you missed out on the last session, then, reading fundamentally is a skill. Skills improve only through practice, and therefore it is important that you read. It is important that you put in that kind of practice in order to become better at RCs. Why is it good? Why is it useful to become better at reading comprehension? Because that is almost 1/4 of your entire exam directly, and it indirectly plays a role in other sections too, particularly in logical reasoning. And therefore, I can very safely say that this is one area which is going to have at least a 25% impact in the exam. So 1/4 of your total weightage should at least get 1/4 of your total efforts too, and that is why we do read. Now, what exactly it is that you should go on and read? So, the answer is very simple. We want to become comfortable with the kind of things that get asked in the CAT exam, isn't it? At the end of the day, what's our goal? We want to go ahead and perform well in the CAT exam. And if that is the goal, then ideally we should read texts that are similar to the kind of things that get asked in the CAT exam, right? So what kind of things get asked in the CAT exam? So there are two aspects to it. First aspect is genre, right? So when we say genre, we talk about the subject matter, the kind of themes that these passages go on to deal with. And then the second thing is sources. So what kind of areas should you read? And sources will basically talk about where you should read these things from. Oh, Karan has some interesting message. I appeared for a mock after 2 months of preparation, scored 6 marks in VARC, 58 in combined DILR quant. Oh, man. Okay. So, we'll talk about this, Karan. We'll talk about it. So, when I say read, it is important. Nowhere do I or anybody else goes on to suggest that only reading is important. Reading is non-negotiable. That is something that we have to do. But beyond that, we also need to go ahead and add some extra things on top of that, and then we can fix it. Right? Good evening, Mansi and Palaksh. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I see Atharv here, of course. He's a regular, so I kind of know him already in a way. And I hope to meet him too one day. So let's see. So genre and source. So what kind of things have been asked in the CAT exam of late? Now I've not sat down and did the analysis for CAT 25 yet, but if I look at the CAT exams prior to that, you'd notice that this is a theme that has kind of been emerging, right? So I do need to accommodate the recent CAT papers, but if I excuse that lapse for the time being, excuse that delay, if you're willing to excuse that delay for the time being, then you notice that we are getting a lot of questions from areas like sociology and anthropology, science and technology, biology, particularly zoology. Within biology, specifically zoology-based passages have been present in a higher instance. Then ecology, the one that talks about environment, right? Business and economy, but of course history, culture, philosophy and psychology. So when I talk about culture, we are talking about all those passages that deal with the books, articles, etc. Right? Those things. Then politics. And then of course others. It's difficult to kind of put every passage under these themes. The passages do go beyond. I've in the actual CAT exam, I've actually read book reviews. I've read movie reviews. Book reviews can still probably go under culture. I've read passages made out of obituaries, passages that deal with the children and their development, whatever. Right? So plenty of variety, but then these are the broad themes. So one of the first things that you want to do is figure out which area or areas you are unfamiliar with, so that you can systematically create a plan and deal with those things. Okay, so that's basically the genres. And then if I talk about the sources, what it is that you should read, then once again, if you look at it, you should read long form articles. So that's one suggestion. So long form articles basically means lengthy articles. Okay, short articles do not challenge you enough at times. So long form articles are pretty useful when it comes to becoming familiar with a particular area. But then the question here would be, where do you read these long form articles from? What should the source of these long form articles be? So once again, if I look at the CAT exam, these are the kind of areas that they have, or these are the kind of websites that they have referred to more often. But then this is only half of it. The other half of the passages have actually been taken from books. So you can say that, okay, roughly around 50% of the passages are from books, 50% are from articles. And normally when they talk about articles, okay, so normally when they talk about articles, they go to these websites. And then there are websites that go beyond this too. So we know that in the past we have seen articles taken from BBC. We have seen articles taken from Nature. We've seen articles taken from Boston University's website, right? So those kind of things. So when Atharv says Eon, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, The Hindu, I don't know, there have been, I mean, in the history of the CAT, yes, there have been two passages that have come from The Hindu, but then just two in the history would mean that yes, it is an important part. You can definitely go ahead and read it, but then of late things have shifted to some of those other websites. So these are the kind of websites that you want to read from, and then combine the knowledge of the sources with the knowledge of genres, and you are all sorted. So what do you read? Well, you plan to focus on articles that talk about sociology, anthropology, science and technology, biology, ecology, business and economy, philosophy, psychology, right? So the areas that are asked frequently and you are not familiar with, those are the areas that you'd go ahead and prioritize when it comes to attacking these. So Anna, Palak has asked a very interesting question that I do want to answer. So Palak says, sir, which one of these is the best for starting? Now that is very tricky. Why is it tricky? These are not exactly websites that give you articles which are easy reads. So if you are somebody who is not into reading, should you start with these? My suggestion, No, please don't do that. So what should you read? You should read something that takes you a little, and I'll emphasize this, okay, takes you a little beyond your comfort zone. Now, I don't know what your comfort zone is, and that is why I cannot really tell you what it is that you exactly read. But think of reading as a ladder. Okay, so you are at a particular step on the ladder. The natural extension would be that, okay, I now move over to the next step of that ladder. Right? So when I talk about, let us say, something like Yawn essays or something like Smithsonian, so here is a ladder. Right? So if this is where Yawn essays are, let's say top of the ladder for our purpose, but frankly, you are here. This is you. Does it make sense to jump from here to here? No. If you do make that jump, what will happen? You'll fail. You'll not be able to jump. So I want you to figure out where you are, and from there read something which is a little more challenging. And you know, I've had students, this is my 25th year of teaching now. Why 25th? Sorry, this is now the 26th year of teaching. So in these 26 years, I have seen occasions when I've asked people to start off with Champak, which is a popular magazine for children. You know, they also publish in English. There have been people that I've told to read Champak. There have been people that I've asked to read India Today. There have been people that I've asked them to go to a newspaper editorial page to begin with. So depending upon wherever you are, whatever you read, you need to now decide, am I able to understand a large chunk of what I am reading? So you ideally want to read that you understand, not completely, but at least 70% to 80% of it, where only around 20%, 25%, 30% bothers you. That's still manageable. Okay, that leap is still doable, manageable. But if you pick up a passage or an article where you barely understand it, where you read it and you're like, bouncer, I'm not able to figure out anything at all, then that won't really make you a better reader. Or if you read something which is way too easy for you. So last year I was working with a student. She used to read a lot. She used to read extensively. Okay, and but then she enjoyed reading fiction. So she began a particular series of books, and like she said that, oh sir, I'm able to read 100, 150 pages every day. But then she was reading more of the same stuff that she enjoyed, and she could understand that completely. So it was reading all right, but it did not help her develop her as a reader. And that is why I had to be a little strict with her and tell her exactly what to read and what to avoid. So once we start working together, we can go ahead and do that. And then Neeru has another very interesting question. Novels are good for reading or not? So Neeru, you see this here? A lot of the passages are actually taken from books. So should you be reading books? Absolutely yes. Now within books you have fiction, you have non-fiction. Would cat give you a passage which is based on fiction? Very, very unlikely. Highly unlikely. There is only a remote possibility of our dealing with fiction in the cat exam. But then does that mean that you should not read fiction at all? No. Once again, there is a ladder, remember? There is a ladder. It's absolutely okay to start with fiction. But then once again, within the domain of fiction, you want to pick up books that challenge you a bit, that take you beyond your, that take you a little beyond your comfort zone. So that is something that you do need to do. Right? So for example, I know people who are very comfortable reading Chetan Bhagat and Amish Tripathi. If they are, then we can move them up and say, hey, why don't you read Sidney Sheldon, Agatha Christie, John Grisham? If they do that, then we can then gradually take them into the world of literary fiction. Why not read a Rushdie or a Naipaul or a Gabriel Garcia Marquez, right? So there has to be that ladder that you can go ahead and begin. And Aditri, I have added a slide where I talk about where you can start from. So read what? Long form articles, Should you read books? A question that you asked and I just very recently answered that, number one, we do get passages from books, and number two, there is no harm in reading them. But then there is another very big reason why I recommend books. So see, a little while ago, we came across a lot of different genres. Now, some of these genres happen to have a very specialized vocabulary of its own. So for instance, when I talk about philosophy, there are a lot of technical terms in the area. Right? If I compare it to say something like a sociology does not have that many technical terms. Ecology, that does not have that many technical terms. But if you talk about philosophy, if you talk about economics, plenty of technical terms. So the area that you want to become familiar with, if that area happens to have a lot of technical words involved, it makes sense to read a book or two, some kind of introductory text that gives you an overview of the entire area and makes you familiar, makes you comfortable with all those technical words. So if you've identified one such area as a genre or a subject area that you want to improve on, then absolutely you should read books. And in that case, if you are not a reader, you're somebody who's not into reading, you're somebody who's only gone through textbooks, you may have this natural question that, okay, which books can I start with? I'll once again emphasize. So if you want to begin reading, well, here is my starter pack for you. So I'm giving you 6 books to read. So here are the 6. I want you to read these 6 books in the order in which I have shared them with you. So do not read them at random. Begin with book 1, then move to book 2, then book 3. So at every level, I have added a little more complexity into the mix. So they are very carefully designed to take you to the next step. In case you're somebody who's already into reading, for example, Neeru told me she already read novels, then for Neeru, that's entirely your call. If you haven't read any of these books, feel more than free to go ahead and read those. And Ashutosh, you're reading The Hindu, that's fabulous. But once again, you need to constantly take a call on, is it taking you a little beyond your comfort zone or not? So if you already understand everything that you read in The Hindu, I think it is time that you move towards something that is tougher. Okay. On the other hand, if you understand very little of the Hindu, maybe you need to take a step back. So entirely up to you. You need to figure out where you are and then move from there. Okay. So Atharv has shared a couple of nice recommendations. Rich Dad Poor Dad is okay, can be read. Psychology of Money is a really nice book, yes. So you have a beginner's pack of 6. Once you are done with these 6, reach out and I can give you the next 6. Okay. So go ahead and do that. So with that discussion on BBC article reading ke liye kaisa hai? Okay. So I talked about quite a few websites today, and you noticed that apart from that, I also wrote BBC, Nature, Boston University, the kind of sources that the CAT exam has taken passages from. So absolutely do read it, but make sure that you're reading those areas from these websites which are relevant for the CAT exam. So read articles that are built around sociology, anthropology, science and technology, culture, particularly within culture, you want to focus on arts, music and books. Right? Cinema is not that frequently asked. Gen Z culture, not yet a very hot topic in the CAT exam. Right? Tanishka, absolutely. Atomic Habits is a fabulous book. Make sure that you implement whatever the book says, and that can then serve a dual purpose. So typically, I would slot books like Atomic Habits under the category of self-help books. We do not consider self-help books as books that are very useful for our CAT prep, but they do serve another purpose. You can use them for motivation, you can use them to become more productive, you can use them to fix your habits. So as long as you're using them for those aspects, it's absolutely okay. But since you've already started Atomic Habits, go ahead, finish it, implement it, and then maybe you can pick up my list. So chaliye, let's go and start working. If you were there in the last session, you know that we work across 2 rounds. How? Round 1 is where you go ahead and attempt the passage. So when I say attempt the passage, you read the passage, you answer every question. Once you are done with that entire attempt, Then I come into picture. So then the round 2 starts, where I explain the passage to you, particularly those parts that you could not understand on your own. And then we dive into questions and discuss all the options that bothered you but were not right. So what is particular, what is special about today's passage is, or today's passages are, is that I have tried to model them on the kind of passages that were asked in the CAT exam in around 2016, 2017. So in 2016, 2017, that was an era when CAT was also experimenting a lot. So there were a couple of years when in RCs we were given two types of passages. Okay, so we were given long passages. So we had long passages that typically ended up getting more questions, and we also had short passages, and these short passages were followed by 3 questions each. So today what I'll take you through are short passages, and as a result, instead of giving you the 4 questions which have become a kind of the norm over the last 4 or 5 years, they will actually have 3 questions. So ready to begin? Ready to start? Karan has asked something which is beyond the scope of what we are covering. Don't you get bored teaching same stuff to every batch every year? Karan, the truth is that number one, every job happens to have a lot of things which or a lot of processes that repeat themselves, no matter what job it is. Think of a barber. Think of a doctor. How many challenging cases do you think a doctor gets? And saying, I have quite a few friends who are doctors, and I'm telling you, 90% of the times they're able to figure out what is wrong with a particular patient within 2 minutes. Do they get bored? Same goes with teaching. In fact, it's true for almost all the jobs, right? There is hardly a job where you won't find processes that repeat. Now, do you get bored by that or not? That depends on whether you like that area or not. So in my case, I became a teacher by choice. I'm a science student who has a background in marketing. I've also learned a bit of psychology. Uh, I worked with a financial institution, for that matter, in a very early part of my career. I moved from those areas towards teaching because I really enjoyed it. And no two students are the same. My lectures are probably the same, but after the lecture, when you start working on the things and you start getting back to me, they're always different. You bring your own unique flavor, your own unique personality. Okay, so those of you who are joining us for the first time, uh, this number tells you 1 of 2 basically means that the passage is spread over 2 slides. This is the first slide. So you already know that there are going to be 2 slides with the passage. So why don't you go ahead, read it. Once you're done reading it, let me know and I'll switch over. Chances are that I would already switch you over to the next slide even before that. So please start. Thank you, Konkona. These are the kind of things that keep me going. Read it? So 10 seconds and I'll take you to the next slide. So that's the last one. Palak, you attempt the passage, then we go ahead and talk about it in round 2, not in round 1. Okay, so I guess we are done with the passage now. So let me be ready to write down your answers and then I'll take you to the questions. Here is question number 1. Go ahead and tell me your answer. Okay, give me your answers, guys. Where are your answers? I forgot to start the timer. In the next question on, I'll start it. Let's see. Okay, so I have one answer from Tanishka and then Sanyam and then Neeru. Fantastic. Okay, so with that, let me take you over to the next question. I think most of us are already through with this. Let's see. Here is your question number 2. $90. Okay, we also have D. Fabulous. Noting down D, Karan. All right, so I've gotten C and I've gotten A. I have 10 more seconds to go. Palak, what other option confuses you? Any other option that you contemplated? Okay, so here is the third and the last question based on the passage. Once again, 90 seconds and then we move on. Okay, Bhavani, I am assuming you were giving answer to the second question. So I'm also jotting down B. Now let's see what your take on third is. Okay, so answers. So we are getting basically A or B. So let me jot that down and we can move on from here. So for third, you've chosen A, you've chosen B. So these are the two answers that I saw. Now let's dive into our passage together. So now if there is anything that you could not understand, please ask me and I would absolutely love to help you. So let's read. What is wrong with eating meat and other animal products such as dairy or eggs? Simple question. What's wrong if you eat meat? What's wrong if you eat eggs? What's wrong if you drink milk? The usual answer appears to be simple. These products involve a great deal of animal suffering, particularly as most of them are produced on factory farms where animals are raised in terribly cramped conditions that exacerbate their suffering. So, exacerbate basically means to make something worse. So, things are already bad. If you do something that makes that bad situation worse, then you manage to exacerbate. So, for example, let us say that I have some pain in my shoulder, but then my friend comes to me and says, hey, let's go and play badminton. And I know that I have some pain in my shoulder, but then I get tempted by his offer and say, oh, wow, that'll be so much fun. Let's go and play badminton. And if I play badminton and my shoulder pain becomes worse, I can say that the badminton session exacerbated my shoulder pain. Okay. So, when you use animal products, it is wrong because those animals suffer due to it, and those animals are also kept in factory farms where, I mean, you've seen these hens, thousands of hens put in the same tiny enclosure. So their living conditions are pretty bad, and those living conditions also make their suffering worse. Now, suffering is the problem. If animal suffering were eliminated or significantly minimized, killing animals would not be such a big deal. Now, suddenly you notice the contrast. We're saying according to this answer, suffering is the problem. So you notice, killing is not an issue. As long as the animals don't suffer, we are okay even if you kill them thereafter. Right? Now that is the conventional moral thinking on animal ethics. So this that refers to what? This. So what is the conventional moral thinking? Suffering is the problem, and if suffering is minimized or eliminated, killing animals would not be such a big deal. And it applies not only to the use of animals for food, but to all animal use. We can use and kill animals for our purposes as long as we treat them humanely. Now, what exactly do we mean by humanely here in this particular case? How do you go on to define humane? A humane person is a person who has a great deal of compassion and caring for others. So, as long as you show compassion, care, where you don't want to make the animal suffer, it's okay to use and kill them. You do not inflict unnecessary suffering on them. Now, this position is so widely accepted and uncontroversial that it is contained in laws that allow us to use and kill animals, but that prohibit cruelty to animals. So, this goes ahead and defines the conventional moral thinking. Then the author comes into picture and he says the problem is that conventional moral thinking about animal ethics is unsound. Now, what do you mean by unsound? Unsound is something that is not based on truth. That's one meaning. Or something that shows poor judgment. Poor judgment. So here he's saying that, so basically he's saying conventional moral thinking is wrong. Why? Because animals are chattel property. Now see, basically chattel as a word means property. If you call something chattel, it basically means you own it. But then you notice property are of two types, fixed and movable. No, immovable and movable. So I have a house, that's property. But imagine if I have a car, that's also property. If I have a music system, that's also a property. So chattel property is normally used in a legal sense to talk about those things that you own which are movable in nature. For example, a lot of people even today have this regressive thought where they think of women as chattel or chattel property, where they think that they own them. Not right, right? We're saying animals, we think of them as our property. The concept of humane treatment and necessary suffering are largely meaningless as moral concepts. Saying if you treat them as property, then do you treat your property with compassion? I mean, I may have a car, I may care for it, I may be emotionally attached to it, but then I would not think of a car as something that is capable of suffering, right? If my car meets with an accident, I will feel bad, but I'll feel bad primarily because of the monetary loss. I'll not really feel bad that, oh, my car has had to undergo so much suffering. I'll not go and hug that accident damaged car and cry for the car. No. So, we're saying in such scenarios, humane treatment, necessary suffering are largely meaningless as moral concepts. They're primarily economic concepts that in reality translate into very little protection for animals. So saying, although conventional ethics say, hey, treat them well, but the truth is we are just using them as property and therefore we don't really provide any protection to animals. Moreover, the idea that killing animals is not a serious issue as long as animals are not made to suffer rests explicitly on the widely accepted idea that animals do not have a morally significant interest in continuing to live. So in other words, the author is saying there that we believe that killing an animal is not equal to putting an animal through suffering. The animals won't mind being killed. And that is nothing more than an anthropocentric stipulation. Anthropocentric is where you look at the world as if humans were at the center, where you think you are the center of the universe. Everything else revolves around you and is there to serve you. So this requirement of it's okay to kill animals comes from that perspective, that mindset. Now let's dive into our questions. So, which of the following is true about conventional moral thinking of animal ethics? We know that the answer is to be found on slide 1. So, if you went back and looked at the relevant paragraph, let's see, it does not take ethics into consideration. False. It does take ethics into consideration. It does. Now, ethics are basically fundamentally about what is right and what is wrong. What is right, what is wrong. So they are saying that there are certain things that are wrong. So it's not that they're not involving ethics or they're not bringing ethics into consideration at all. B. So nobody really chose this. So I think A and C was something that you guys ruled out. So I'll not get into those. But let's look at B. It focuses on treating animals as humanely as possible, with the exception of killing them for human purposes. True. We can infer it from the second paragraph. And then D, it rests on the idea that animals' purpose is to fulfill the needs of humans. If I take you back to the second paragraph, will we be able to figure this out? That the purpose of animals is to fulfill the needs of humans. Let's go back. All we know is that as long as you treat them humanely, it's okay to use them, even kill them. But then does it talk about what the purpose of an animal's existence is? It is merely talking about those animals that are killed for their meat or that are somehow used for some other product of theirs. So in the case of these animals, we need to be humane to them. But are they saying that the purpose of these animals is to be used by human beings, to fulfill the needs of humans? Animals' purpose is a different thing altogether. So you may work with an organization, but then does that mean that your purpose is to work with that organization? That organization may benefit through your labor. They may have policies that try to make things as comfortable for you as possible, but does that automatically mean that your purpose is to serve that organization? Similarly, you may use animals as humanely as possible, if I may add. That does not automatically imply that the purpose of the animal is to fulfill your needs, and that is why this is something that cannot really be determined on the basis of the passage. So we're looking for something that is true. B is true, D is not true. That is why B is our answer. Next one, which of the following is a valid inference drawn from the passage? Now this is called a reasoning based question. They get asked very frequently. Inference basically means conclusion, and even in these questions you need to decide which of these can be termed true on the basis of the passage. Once we move forward, maybe around June we can start adding more nuances to it, right? So let's start. So your answers were C, A and B. Nobody chose D, so I'm skipping that. Let's start. So starting with A, eating animal products must be punishable by law. Is there anything in the passage that says that we need to make a law that says that you can't eat an animal? First two paragraphs definitely no, because they say that it's okay to kill them and use them, and the next two criticize that position, but nowhere does the author go on to say that we should stop doing it and anybody who does that should be punished by law. Not given. So can't say or cannot be determined. CBD is cannot be determined on the basis of the passage for sure. Killing of animals is justified under certain circumstances. So see, when you talk about the passage, we are saying that something that the author would agree with. So does the author agree with the fact that it is okay to kill animals under certain conditions? Conventional moral thinking says that under certain conditions, if humans need to use them, it's okay to kill them, but that is conventional moral thinking. The passage clearly says that conventional moral thinking is unsound. So which means that anything that they agree with, conventional moral thinking agrees with, will not be true on the basis of this passage. The author very clearly says that to say that animals have no interest in living is an anthropocentric stipulation, where in reality is saying that animals, it's morally wrong to kill animals, and therefore under certain circumstances something that you won't be able to figure out on the basis of the passage. Okay, so that's a tricky part for you right there. And then C, animals have to suffer as a result of human demand for animal products. True. We are causing suffering to animals because we use them. You can get that from the second paragraph and from the fourth. So of A, B and C, C is true, the other two are not, and that is why our answer must be C. And with that, let's get into question 3. The author of the passage is likely to agree to which of the following statements? Once again, you just need to figure out which one of these is true on the basis of what the author has said. So you fundamentally need to focus on the last two paragraphs, slide 2. Your answers were A and B. C and D were ruled out by everyone. So let's see. Animals do not possess a moral and fulfilling sense of living. False. Look at the fourth paragraph. I'll just take you back to the fourth paragraph. The idea that killing animals is not a serious issue as long as animals are not made to suffer rests explicitly on the widely accepted idea that animals do not have a morally significant interest in continuing to live. And that is nothing more than anthropocentric stipulation. So the author here very clearly saying that this is false, which means that according to the author, animals do have a moral stake in living. And that is why this can be termed false. B, as long as there are vested economic interests, the animal population is bound to suffer. That's true. anthropocentric position. We believe that, and moreover, if I take you back to the fourth paragraph once again, chattel property, economic concepts. So we just think of them as property, products. So if we have some economic interest, we're going to continue to do it to them. And therefore, between A and B, A is false, and that makes B definitely a better answer choice. So that's your passage 1. Do you have any other question? Or we can sit down and practice another passage another day. I think we are very close to 11. If we start another passage, we won't be able to finish it. So let's stop here today. So what I'll do is I can take questions from you. So if you happen to have any question, any concern, you can go ahead and share that with me. And if a question pops up in your mind later, you know that you can reach out to me in the group that we have. Okay. And so by the time you type a question and answer, I will go ahead and share something else with you. Discipline turns ambition into achievement. So you have this ambition of getting into a great B school that obviously requires you to get a great CAT percentile. It requires you to build a certain profile. It requires you to work on your communication skills, your presence. So if you want all of that, then you need to have discipline. Do you know what discipline means? If you do, just drop into the group and share that with me. So if you stay disciplined, if you show up for work consistently every day, then you will most certainly be able to achieve the goal that you have set for yourself. Okay, so that's it from me today. I will see you in the next session. Now we are pretty soon starting a new series as well. So I realize you and I have been working only on reading comprehension on this channel. We will go ahead and start working on verbal ability as well. So and thereafter we just make sure that we go through RC and VA both. Right? Atharv says short passages, easy to moderate questions. Yes, actually the second one that I had was more challenging, but then we can pick it up in our one of our subsequent sessions and practice that there. Okay, so chaliye, have a nice evening, and you know where to reach me, the Telegram group, remember, and I'll catch you there henceforth. So take care.